Hey, thanks for stopping by today. You want to have some fun? We're going to do a neat project today. This is a piece of 12-inch by 24-inch floor tile in a dark color, and we're going to make an address sign out of it. I do quite a few of these. They hold up great. I've got one in my front yard that I made 3 years ago with my first laser in it, and it looks like the day I made it. What we're going to do is we're going to go to Lightburn. We're going to lay this out right quick. I'm going to show you how to save some time when you're doing these, and really a fun project. If you've got the room, just about any CO2 laser can do this, and even diodes, but it just takes a lot longer. So stick around. Let's go make an address sign out of this thing. We've got our design done, and so what I wanted to do is show you the details on how we might be able to shave some time off of this address sign that we're making. So the black layer I've represented is the outside or the perimeter of my floor tile. It makes life so much easier if you illustrate whatever you're putting in your laser for lining things up, those kind of things. And so my floor tile is 23 3/4 inches wide by 11 13/16 inches high. And what we've done is we've designed a 1/4 inch border around this. We put in an address that in the font that the customer wanted, and we've dropped in a graphic that they chose. And so got the approval from the customer on this design. And so the first thing that I wanted to show you is normally for smaller things, my engraving speed is right around 400 millimeters per hour, but because this sign is almost 24 inches wide, we can ramp up our speed and save some time. So let's kind of take this a bit at a time and see if we can shave some time off of this. First of all, just normal, simple, everyday settings. Let me turn this off. Turn the frame layer off, and we'll estimate it. And you can see that right now we've got an hour and 48 minutes worth of engrave time. That's a little bit much for a sign like this, and so I've got to get that engraved time down. And so one of the first things that I would do is I would go ahead and come into my engrave layer and jump it up to about 600 millimeters per second. Now if you've got a higher quality machine like a Thunder, they're designed to go up around 1,000 millimeters per second. Typically I don't go over 600 to 700. It just depends on how big your graphic is. And we're going to jump our power up to 65. Going faster, we need more power. We're going to keep the air assist off. Our lines per inch are going to be defaulted at 317. We'll see what that does for us. And let's re-estimate it. And so we've cut, about 30 some odd minutes off of that just by changing the speed of the laser. So you can see with having a higher quality machine, just this one project, you're saving a half an hour. You can imagine the kind of time you can save by the difference of between 400 millimeters per second and 600 millimeters per second. But I think we can do better than that. So let's look at a couple of other things. So one of the things that you'll find out, and I do this all the time, anytime you have a fill-in border, it's an absolute killer for time, meaning that that's what's going to take the majority of your engrave time. Okay, just by changing the speed from 400 millimeters an hour to 600 millimeters an hour, we saved a little bit over a half an hour on this engrave. The other thing that can save you a ton of time, there's actually two more things to consider, and that's your lines per inch. With these larger designs like this, a lot of times you can take these lines per inch down. Let's try 254, and we'll re-estimate it. And so now we went from an hour and 13 minutes down to just about an hour. So we've saved another 13 minutes. Now we're about 45 minutes worth of time savings between those two things. So we're right at about an hour for our sign time. There's one other thing you can try, and I don't like doing it a lot because it's hard on your machine, but in certain circumstances it works pretty well. And I'll show you, and it's about using the flood fill. The thing about flood fill that you've got to be careful of is it doesn't work great in all circumstances. And so what I'll show you what I mean. If we come in here and we go to advanced and we turn on flood fill and we say okay and we re-estimate this, you're going to see that we're going to have a pretty good reduction in time. We've gone from an hour down to less than a half an hour. Huge time savings. Here's the problem. I'll blow this up so you can see it. As I scrub through this design, you'll see, let me just back this up so we can look at the whole thing. So what will happen is you'll see that we get to the frame's going to work out pretty good. It's going to stay consistent, not a problem. Frame will probably work out well, but watch what happens when we get to the America design. It starts to jump around a ton. It'll just stop and go to different, see that big line opening that it's left? And you're going to see that it starts to leave all kinds of holes in your designs, and then it comes back and tries to fill those later. Well, the problem is invariably you're going to see some of that being missed. And so the only time I would ever recommend you using flood fill to reduce time is on this border. I wouldn't use it on the text or the numbers. I wouldn't use it on this design. So what we'll probably do is we'll go back here and I'll actually change this layer to a different color. We'll just add that. We'll go ahead and change these numbers the same. $254. We'll make sure the flood fill is on there, and we'll come back to our blue layer and turn the flood fill off because it's not going to work well now. And I'll go ahead and get these layers lined up like I want them. And so now if we preview this, we're down to less than a half an hour from an hour and 48 minutes from when we started. And if you look, it's not gonna jump around. So the internal part of the sign is gonna all go smooth. It's not gonna jump around at all. That's gonna work out great. You're not gonna have any holes in your design. And then on the frame is the only place we use flood fill. And you're gonna see on the vertical parts, it's gonna just go back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And a lot of that is hard on your machine, I believe. So I don't use flood fill a lot, but in a case like this, it can be beneficial from a time savings perspective. So we've gone from an hour and 40 minutes down to less than a half an hour. So we saved an hour and 10 minutes on this design just by understanding your speed, your line intervals, and when to use flood fill and when not to use flood fill. So what we're going to do is we're going to kick this to the laser. I'm not going to bore you with all the engraving details. We'll take a look at this thing when it's done and talk a little bit about other things that you can do to save time. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and load this piece of tile in my laser. One of the things that I work with people all the time, don't overcomplicate on what you need to do for origin. I use user origin all the time, and the beautiful thing about user origin is I place my tile where I want to work. In this case, it's the middle of the bed. I'm going to drive my laser head over to this upper left-hand corner. I'm going to line this up so the laser pointer is in this upper left-hand corner, and I'm going to go ahead and hit origin on the controller. You just heard it beep, okay? As long as I'm in user origin in Lightburn and the upper left-hand corner is selected for that origin, that's as simple as it gets. Now the only other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to right arrow, and I'm going to go ahead and just make sure that this red pointer follows the top of this piece of tile. And that way my tile will be parallel with the gantry. So I'll just, there's not really anything to lining this stuff up, guys. Just go back and forth and you'll see that this red dot is following the top of that tile. And even if I mess it up, let's say I go over here, I can always just go to Lightburn and say go to origin. And it'll take me right back to where I set the origin. I'm ready to go. So I can pull the trigger on this engrave. And so I highly recommend using user origin because you don't have to sync the desktop with what's going on in the laser. You can work where you want to, and it's easy to set up. So let's go ahead and get this thing fired up. Okay, the last thing I'm going to do, just to make sure, because we've got a border around this address sign, if you're off just a little bit, you're going to see it in that border. And so you want to make sure that you're good all the way around. So I've got the file loaded. I believe I've got it lined up, but we're going to just go ahead and frame it right quick. So what we're going to do ahead, I'm going to hit the frame button, and we're going to follow that red light around just to make sure that it follows the perimeter of that tile. And you can see it's following that edge just right. Nice. All right, I think we're ready to go. Let's pull the trigger on this. Looks like it turned out great, but we've got a problem here. So this section right in here, what happened is there was some buildup on the nozzle and it was plugging off some of the laser. So not gonna touch the piece. I'm gonna show you how to get back into Lightburn and just do this section. So we'll be able to save this piece. It's gonna look great. It's gonna turn out good, but I wasn't watching it. I had to turn the air pressure up a little bit to keep the junk off the nozzle and didn't do it. And so this section right in here doesn't have hardly any engraving at all. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to jump back into Lightburn and I'm going to show you how to do the start from here. So what we're going to do is we're going to back up in the preview window and start right at this end of this A, and then just let it go, and then I'll stop it right here. Now you're going to have to manually stop it, but you'll see what I'm going to do, and we're going to save this piece. So we're going to jump back into Lightburn, and so I'm going to zoom in here and we're going to preview this, and I'm going to get this big so I can see. So that problem area where the laser didn't engrave was basically the I and the C. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this scroll bar, I'm going to back it up just until I get to the bottom, or right at the edge of the A, right there, okay? And what I'm going to do is I'm going to come down here and say start here. Now the only thing you're doing with this process is resetting the start point of your file. It will want to run the entire file. And what we're going to do is we're going to start it right here and let it engrave the section that it didn't engrave, and then pause it when it's done and hit escape, and we should be good to go. So we're going to go start here. We're going to send the job to the laser. We're going to go ahead and override it, say yes, and now we're going to go back and fix that spot. Okay, so I've sent the updated file to the controller. I'm going to go File, should be the top one. I'm going to say Enter, and you notice that it's only showing just where it starts, okay? So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and hit the Start button. It's going to come over here. Let's see if I can get rid of some lights. And we'll let it run and fix that spot. Now when it's done, when it gets into the area that's already engraved, I'll probably just hit pause and then escape, and we'll have our project done. Well, there you have it, a finished sign. What a fun project this was. A couple of notes about this project. The runtime was just a little bit longer than what the estimated time was in Lightburn. This actually took 35 minutes to make, and the runtime estimate on Lightburn was 27 minutes. So really not too awfully bad. We went back and fixed this section that didn't laser that you saw, and we used the preview mode to be able to back that project up and start where that section was. And then once we fixed that one section, I paused it, hit escape, and went on with the process. The other thing that I will tell you is remember that we made huge strides in our time. We started with 400 millimeters per second and just a straight fill engrave for the perimeter, for the frame and for the inside. And it was about an hour and 48 minutes for a total runtime. A couple of modifications later where we actually did flood fill for the perimeter and then regular fill for the inside parts of the sign. We went from 400 millimeters per second to 600 millimeters per second. The other change that we did is we went from 318 lines per inch to 254 lines per inch. And if you look at all of those changes that we made, we went from an hour and 48 minutes to 35 minutes on the runtime. Well, if you can make those kind of runtime changes on a lot of your projects, you will save yourself a ton of time, and it makes it so it can be affordable for your customers. So don't be afraid to play with that stuff. You can go down on your lines per inch in a lot of times if your graphics are a little bit larger. When in doubt, play with it and see what it looks like. You might be surprised on what you can get away with. Don't just pick one speed and pick one lines per inch and use it and that's all you ever do. You'll be surprised on how much time you can save if you just take the time to play with that stuff a little bit. I hope you guys enjoyed the content. If you do me a favor and you like the content, a thumbs up, a like, that really helps me out on the channel. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do so. We're at about 15,700 subscribers. I would love to get to 20,000 by the end of the year. So if you haven't subscribed, please do it. And if you have the ability, hit that thanks button and contribute to the channel. It's those contributions is what's making this content possible. Got some exciting news coming up. We're going to have some additional video and audio equipment that we're going to add so I can provide multiple views, those kind of things, to provide better content for the channel. Really appreciate all the support. Until next time, thanks and have a great day.